Welcome back now for the news in detail. President Vladimir Putin's party has won a majority in Moscow elections. Election officials say the United Russia won 24 seats out of the city Duma's 45. The Communist Party claimed 14 seats, while the centre-left Just Russia took 4 seats. The election came onto international limelight after opposition candidates were barred from polls. This sparked mass protest. Putin's United Russia lost 16 seats from the 40 it previously held. Central Election Commission Chairwoman Ella Pamfilova says over 90% registered voters cast their ballot state. Communications watchdog Roskomnadzor has accused tech giants Google and Facebook of election meddling. Roskomnadzor says US tech giants allowed political advertisement during Sunday's polls. It said they had been asked to ban such publicity. Russia and France have called for combined efforts of all signatories to save the Iran nuclear deal. Earlier, Tehran said it was activating nuclear centrifuges, taking a third step away from the accord. The Kremlin said French and Russian presidents discussed the nuclear pact on phone. It said Macron and Putin exchanged information about steps they will take on that track. The two presidents also assessed Saturday's prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. They expressed hope for normalization of Russian-Ukrainian relations. The Kremlin said both heads of state have agreed to continue contact. Foreign and defense ministers of the two countries will meet today in the Security Cooperation Council. Now, Iran says its tanker released by Gibraltar has reached its destination and sold its oil. Foreign Office spokesman Abbas Mousavi said the Adrian Darya oil tanker docked somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. The U.S. says it will sanction whoever purchases Iranian oil. A U.S. official said Iranian oil sales have nosedived because of American pressure. It said the U.S. will keep exerting pressure on Tehran and there will be no waivers giving relief from sanctions. Meanwhile, Iran says it will release the British oil tanker it seized soon after completing required legal procedures. Iran seized the British flag tanker in the Strait of Hormuz after the UK seized the Iranian tanker near Gibraltar in July. Now, in Lebanon, Hezbollah claims it has downed an Israeli drone outside the southern town of Ramia. This is the second time an Israeli UAV has crossed over into Lebanon in a week. Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV said the drone shot down by the forces is now in their possession. Last week, Tel Aviv's military drones targeted Hezbollah's offices in Beirut. Chief Hassan Nasrallah had warned of counter-attacks deep inside Israeli territory if it violated Lebanese airspace again. In Iraq, the US-led coalition has killed 8 ISIS militants in an airstrike in northern Nineveh province. In a statement, Iraqi military said the raid destroyed the militants' hideout on an island in the Tigris River. In another operation, the coalition arrested 9 ISIS militants in central Salahuddin province. The military said the militants were planning to attack the provincial council buildings and security forces. Moving on, Turkish President Erdogan says Ankara and Washington have disagreements over the planned safe zone in northern Syria. Speaking at a rally, Erdogan said the US is looking to establish a safe zone for a terrorist organization. He also said Washington is seeking it for terrorists rather than Turkey. Meanwhile, Turkish Defense Ministry said joint patrols with the US will continue in the coming days for establishment of the zone. Meanwhile, 29 people have been killed in 2 separate attacks in northern Burkina Faso. Government spokesman Remiz Falgan says the attacks were a bid to sabotage security efforts in the region. Falgan said 15 were killed after a van hit an improvised explosive device in Barsalaro area. He said 14 others were killed in another attack on a food convoy. Government officials say military reinforcements have been deployed in the area to prevent more attacks. The fourth round of Russian and US counter-terrorism consultations will be held in Vienna today. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Molotov and the US Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan will take part in the talks. Sullivan says he will use the platform to facilitate information sharing so US can be protected from terror attacks. Sergei Molotov said both parties will sum up results and outline prospects. Is a terrorist migration, the activities of IS in Afghanistan and terror financing top of the agenda. Sergei Molotov said counterterrorism cooperation builds confidence necessary for progress in bilateral relations. Now, Pakistan has called upon the US and Taliban to re-engage in talks for peace in Afghanistan. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict. Pakistan said it has always condemned violence and called for restraint from all sides. The statement said Pakistan will continue to facilitate the Afghan peace process. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the US is ready to restart peace talks if Taliban honor their promises. In an interview, Pompeo said the US will not reduce military support for Afghan troops to keep pressure on the Taliban. The Taliban said the US decision to cancel peace talks will lead to further loss of American lives and assets. In a statement, the group spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said the move will expose the anti-peace stance of US to the world. Earlier, US President Donald Trump called for peace talks with the Taliban over an attack in Afghanistan that killed an American soldier. Foreign Minister Shahmehmood Qureshi is representing Pakistan at the 42nd session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva today. The UNHRC has opened its two-week session to examine human rights violations worldwide. Qureshi said he will shake the global concerns on serious human rights abuses in Indian-occupied Kashmir. He is also scheduled to meet international media representatives to present Pakistan's stance on various regional and international issues. During his three-day visit, the foreign minister will also hold meetings with leaders of OIC and WHO. Earlier, Qureshi said there is no chance of talks between Pakistan and India until New Delhi holds violation of human rights in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The situation in Myanmar, Indian-occupied Kashmir, Yemen, Ukraine, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Central African Republic and Georgia will be on the forum's agenda. Meanwhile, Sudan's new cabinet takes oath as the country transitions to civilian rule after protests overthrew President Omar al-Bashir in April. The 18-member cabinet of Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok took oath at the presidential palace in Khartoum. It is expected to steer the country during a transition period of 39 months. The lineup was formed after Sudan swore in a sovereign council last month. The council was made after a power-sharing deal between protesters and the military. Hamdok's cabinet will be expected to fight corruption and end conflicts in the country. In Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has declared former ruler Robert Mugabe a national hero. He said the country will be in mourning until the former leader is buried next week. The Zimbabwean government plans a state funeral for former President Mugabe in a stadium in the capital, Harare. Mugabe dominated Zimbabwean politics for 4 decades from independence in 1980 until he was ousted by the army in 2017. Mugabe's nephew says his family and tribal chiefs have finalized the program for his burial. Meanwhile, people pray for the leader at a packed Sacred Heart Cathedral in Harare. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will try to save his job and his hardline Brexit strategy in the UK Parliament today. Johnson will face his Irish counterpart Leo Varadkar in another showdown week following his loss of parliamentary control. PM Boris Johnson vowed to take Britain out of the EU with or without a divorce deal by October 31st, but has been blocked by Parliament. His bid to break the deadlock through a snap election is also facing an almost certain second successive defeat today. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab says the Prime Minister will not break any law to push through a no-deal Brexit. But Raab said Johnson would test the limit of the law passed by the Parliament in court. In case the current deadlock continues, Britain might need another extension in the October 31st Brexit deadline. All 28 current EU leaders would have to approve what would be the third Brexit extension this year. Ireland's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar says Dublin is open to Northern Ireland-specific solutions for a Brexit deal with the UK. Varadkar says the breakthrough is unlikely during his meeting with Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday. He says an agreement can be reached during the EU summit next month. Talks between the EU and UK over Brexit have faltered on how to avoid border checks between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Welcome back now. France says this year's severe heatwave killed 1,500 people in the country. Health Minister Agnes Bazine said the death toll was 91% higher than the average calculated over years. But Bazine said Paris was able to cut mortality rates by a factor of 10 due to preventive measures. Record-breaking heat hit France and other parts of Europe from June 24th to July 27th this year. During the spell, France recorded its highest ever recorded temperature of 46 degrees Celsius. A powerful typhoon killed 5 people and damaged nearly 500 houses in North Korea. Earlier, Typhoon Lingling killed 5 people and injured 27 in South Korea. Typhoon Lingling has flooded 46,000 hectares of farmland. Flights were cancelled and tens of thousands of homes left without power. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held an emergency meeting and scolded officials for lack of action as the typhoon approached. Four people are missing after a cargo vessel overturned off the coast of Georgia. The U.S. Coast Guard have rescued 20 crew members. The cargo ship was disabled in the St. Simons Sound after a fire erupted aboard the cargo ship. The company and South Korea's foreign ministry said rescue teams were searching for 4 crew members believed to be inside the engine room. The ship was due to arrive in Baltimore today. In Madagascar, Father Pedro, considered an arm of God by the locals, has established a town on a landside site. Akamasoa offers home education, meals and above all hope to an otherwise impoverished community. Watch this report for more.
A mountain of garbage that became an oasis of hope. That's how one resident of Akamasoa describes the dump site. This pile of rubbish in Antananarivo was home to hundreds of families making a living sifting through the debris for scraps to sell.
It's hard work because it takes a lot of time to find something. Per day, I earn 40 cents for a bucket of coal, 50 cents for a basket of bones. I often earn 40 cents for aluminium bottles.
For the last 30 years, Humanitarian Association Akamasoa has been building villages like these to help the poor in Madagascar's capital. This woman can now send her children to school and put a roof over their heads. The town of Akamasoa was founded by 71-year-old Father Pedro Opeka. Born in Buenos Aires, he wanted to be a professional football player, but instead found his calling in helping Madagascar's downtrodden.
We humanized this garbage. We humanized it because if it had not been for our school, all the work that Amakasoa did here, it would have been a place of violence and of total anarchy. Today, they are poor, but virtuous. There is a dignity here. This dignity is priceless.
Leva believes he found dignity thanks to Father Pedro. He was 6 years old and searching for scraps on the dump with his parents when he met the priest. He was schooled thanks to the Akamasoa Association and is now a maths teacher.
For me, Father Pedro is the hand of God that touched me directly. When he says something, he does it. I've seen it for a long time.
For many here, Father Pedro is the embodiment of Christianity. His work and his attitude has a daily and uplifting impact on their lives.
The first beauty pageant for people was Albinism, held in Malawi. The winners of the pageant were crowned by the country's First Lady. This report has more.
It's hard living with albinism anywhere in the world, but especially in Africa. Now, Malawi has taken a great step to boost the confidence of people living with the condition. To encourage the people living with albinism to live fuller lives, Malawi took a great step ahead by holding a beauty pageant in the country's capital. People from different walks of life attended the event with enthusiasm. The pageant winners were awarded a prize of $1,350 and a laptop. The First Lady of Malawi, Chikondi Kanjanza, crowned the winner.
Very excited. I didn't really expect to be the first ever Miss Albinism in Malawi. What I'm going to do now, firstly, is to bring awareness to communities, especially the local communities that hold negative attitudes, myths and misconceptions about persons with albinism.
Mr. Albinism in Malawi also expressed his joy.
There were a lot of handsome boys, a lot of intelligent boys, maybe more than me, but I've won the main prize. So I feel so excited, so overwhelmed.
The organizer is sure that the winner will increase awareness about living with albinism.
At the end of the day, these people are going to take oath of office, and they are going to make sure that they play ambassadorial duties in making sure that they take issues of albinism even beyond the country.
UN Resident Coordinator in Malawi, Maria Jose Torres, believes all of them are people with talent and beauty.
Really acknowledge that before the census we thought that there were 15,000 people living with albinism in Malawi. Today we know you are 134,000. This is an amazing number of people with talent, with brains, and also with beauty.
The winners of the contest vowed to let the world know that persons with albinism also have to enjoy the human rights as everyone else has.
In business stories, Asian stocks have top-toed higher today amid a cautious market mood. There is hope of growth in the world's major economies. The positive mood was backed by China's central bank as it cut the minimum mandatory cash holding limit on banks. The step led to China's yuan slipping against the dollar today while stocks gained. The Shanghai Composite Index is up almost 0.6%. Japan's Nikkei and South Korea's Kospi edged up over 0.5%. Australia's ASX 200 and London's FTSE2 gained fractionally. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.